Good morning, everybody. Let's try that again. I know it's Thursday. Good morning, everybody. How many of you have been with us since Sunday? All right, this is mile 23 of your marathon. You got to push through to the rest of it. I hope you guys have been getting a lot out of your classes, a lot out of your networking. And for those of you who weren't here on Monday, my name is Paul Kautza. I'm the Director of Education for the Data Warehousing Institute, and I'm the guy responsible for your marathon in the classrooms with your instructors. So I know I've seen a lot of you over the week and talked to a lot of you, and I hope you're getting a lot out of it. So another day and a half. Just a couple housekeeping notes. Tomorrow, classes start sharply at 8 a.m., and we'll have a shortened lunch and get you guys out of here about 3:30 so you can get home. So a little bit shorter day. The class length is the same, but lunch is a little shorter tomorrow. So let's get on with the day. And with that, I got my two keynoters this morning that I'm very proud to introduce. Ralph Hughes. Ralph Hughes has been building data warehouses since the mid-1980s, starting on mainframe computers. Today, Ralph serves as a chief systems architect for Ceregenics, a Denver-based data warehousing business intelligence consulting firm, and is also a senior consultant with Cutter Consortium on its data insight and social BI practice. He has led multiple BI programs and projects for Fortune 500 companies in aerospace, telecom, government, and life sciences. He has authored the first book on the subject titled Agile Data Warehousing, with a more advanced book coming out later this month. Over the past 14 years, he has trained, coached, and managed more than 1,000 BI professionals worldwide in the discipline of incremental and iterative delivery of large data management systems. And for the past 3 years, Ralph has helped me kind of shape the curriculum for TDWI and Agile for both our conferences and our on-site programs. Our second keynoter is Dave Stodder. Dave is the director of TDWI Research for Business Intelligence. As an analyst, writer, and researcher, he has provided thought leadership on key topics in BI, analytics, IT, and information management over the past 2 decades. Previously, he headed up his own independent firm and served as vice president of research with vice president and director of research for Ventana Research. He was the founding chief editor of Intelligent Enterprise, a major publication and media site dedicated to the BI and data warehousing community, and served as editorial director there for 9 years. With TDWI Research, Dave focuses on providing research-based insight and best practices for organizations implementing BI, analytics, performance management, and related technologies and methodologies. So with that, I give you Dave Stodder and Ralph Hughes.
Thank you very much, Paul. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, good morning. How many, just for my own edification, how many of you are here for the first time at a TDWI World Conference? Whoa, first time, that's great. Another show of hands, how many of you, at your organizations, when you wanted to do BI and data warehousing systems, your company said, okay, we want you to design systems so that everything will stay exactly the same. This company is not going to change at all. Oh, there is one person. I have to talk to you later. Well, I think, the thrust, and I think it's clear, is that probably with all systems, but I think particularly BI and data warehousing systems are often brought in so that organizations can adapt to change, things that are changing in their environments. And so Agile is really about how organizations can adapt to change, adopt new ways. We can use the other word that sounds an awful lot like it. And so that's what we're really going to be stressing this morning with what we talk about. So as Paul talked about, there's obviously a lot of activities that are happening with TDWI around the topic of Agile. And so I just wanted to put a summary of these things up here and get you to see what we're doing with Agile and how important a topic it is at TDWI events. Of course, this morning we're going to be talking mostly about the adoption of Agile methods among business intelligence and data warehousing development teams, a major research project that we undertook this year. So that's going to be the focus of what we're going to talk about today. But I'm actually working on another best practices report that's about Agile, and I'll give a little bit of discussion about that today, about achieving greater agility with business intelligence and analytics, some of the sort of surrounding issues around why organizations are having to change their development practices and processes. So looking at next year, we're actually going to have an executive summit, a special conference that is co-located with our world conferences that will be dedicated to this Agile theme. That'll be in San Diego next August. And of course, as Paul talked about, ongoing TDWI world conferences, summits, forum sessions, and then we of course have lots of webinars, blogs that are on this topic as well. So we're hoping that TDWI can be a place where you can go to understand how to change development methods, how to adapt BI and data warehousing systems to the kinds of things that are going on in the environment in your organization that are causing change. So why is agility, the talk of BI and data warehousing? Well, I think, actually some recent research that we did do is talk about things like economic instability. That was one of the top reasons that found in research. Increased competition. These are kind of things, increased competition is always there, but also shorter decision cycles. That was the third on the list of factors. So organizations throughout are facing where they need to make decisions more quickly, involve people in a more dynamic way in their decision-making processes. So things are changing quickly. And so agility is really about how organizations can adapt to change and take advantage of emerging opportunities, and how they can use those BI systems to support that need in organizations rather than stick their feet in cement so that they can't move. And I think that's a legacy that BI data warehousing has really been about, trying to get organizations out of that mode. But it's difficult in organizations to kind of get to systems that can support change. And then the other, I think, and Ralph will be talking about this quite a bit, is how to achieve higher productivity with BI and data warehousing and better quality. Because obviously as organizations are using data to make decisions throughout the organizations more, issues of productivity, how can we get more applications up there? How can we have more data access for more kinds of users? And then quality riding right on the top of that. Obviously the systems have got to be high quality as well as the data. And actually, in a recent research we did at the TDWI World Conference in June, we asked in our tech survey, actually this was about big data. And you think of volume, the velocity, variety of data, the three V's that people talk about with big data. On top of all of those that people talked about as the key challenge they were facing with big data was slow development time. So even then, even in that kind of context, that's the biggest challenge that they're facing, is they can't seem to get BI and data warehousing systems and applications up and running and to users fast enough. I think another key issue that I'm sure you're all reading about and encountering in your organizations is this idea of the analytics culture and competing on analytics, the growth of not just BI systems, but analytics, kind of as a companion to BI systems to allow users to do more discovery in the data, to take a more iterative kind of approach to their data, to ask a question that then changes their follow-up questions. So it's sort of a companion to the more query and reporting style that's familiar with BI systems. But in any case, BI and analytics are creating this analytics culture that organizations want, where more and more decisions throughout the organizations, whether they be strategic decisions, tactical decisions, or operational decisions, are based on data and based on analysis. So this is fueling a lot of demand for not only just for the BI systems, but for a lot of change in those BI and data warehousing systems to adapt to new kinds of iterative questioning styles by users. And then I think there's also just growing demand in organizations. If you look at around organizations, how many departments, how many operations were really run by spreadsheets, gut feel, decision making based on sort of past experience, rather than decisions made based on an assessment of the conditions, assessment of the competition, and what could be done based on good data analysis. So there's demand, I think, throughout organizations, and then demand also for just value. What kind of value can you get from these data systems now that we've stored massive volumes of data, terabytes in many cases? The big question really at the top levels of organizations is, what can we do to gain more value from this data? Why are we just storing it when we could be doing more with it? Does it have a value? So what I want to talk about, we're going to talk about really a lot of the development methodologies and things like that most of the day, but just some of the technology developments, and I'm sure you're seeing this out there in the exhibit floor that we saw Tuesday and Wednesday, and that we are covering in TDWI research. And so these are some of the things that I think are really what's happening, in the response to this need for greater agility. One is the idea of self-service BI and analytics. How many in your organization, how many organizations here would you say, you have self-service BI systems that users are using right now? So yeah, it's not too many, partly because it's sort of ill-defined what exactly is meant by self-service. I think it's kind of a spectrum, moving away from IT control to where users are making more decisions about what kind of data they're going to access, what kind of analysis they're going to be doing, their ability to design their own reports and dashboards, obviously, things like that. And so really it's about less dependence on IT. But I think, as you get more and more of that functionality in the user base, it generates also a need for more agile data warehousing systems to respond to lots of different styles of attack on that data. So self-service BI and analytics, a major trend to give users more flexibility, but then that has sort of an echo effect on the data warehousing systems that has to be taken into account. Another is cloud, and of course that's an issue that TDWI is going to be addressing at a Solutions Summit in December. So cloud is something that's very important in our spectrum right now for TDWI. And that's how organizations are also, dealing with the dynamic situations in their organizations, spinning up things like analytic sandboxes, BI reporting systems that can be used for, say, mobile devices, things that they need up very quickly. And of course, the potential for reduced, all the arguments for cloud computing, reducing the cost, they don't have to configure the systems on premises, reducing a lot of the complexity around the IT and data warehouse design, theoretically. Because obviously there's a lot of issues of trying to get the data, which could be an entire discussion into itself. But in any case, cloud, BI, and data warehousing is very important to adjusting to changing circumstances, dynamic conditions in organizations. The other is all the technology that's being used for dynamic scaling. So you need to ramp up systems very quickly, and cloud being one of them, but also just internally, things like data virtualization. We're going to be hearing more about that. Use of in-memory computing, so you can move more data in front of the users and so they can play with it. Memory, of course, getting cheaper and larger is very much an option. In database processing, so using the database power to do more powerful analytics and ETL and things like that. And then the use of parallel and grid systems, and that sort of plays into the idea of Hadoop and MapReduce, where you're able to have the kind of software that can support parallel distribution on lots of different systems, commodity hardware, things like that, allowing organizations to scale up, get big fast, basically, is to deal with what their changing analytic requirements and reporting requirements. So that's sort of a survey of a lot of the technology that's happening. So this isn't really just about development, but it's about really a big change that's going on towards agility in the BI and data warehousing industry. So for users, what are some of the concerns that they have about these systems when it comes to agility? Well, one is obviously speed. We've sort of talked about that, and I mentioned that inability to develop systems fast enough is, even in a big data environment, is really still their main concern with BI systems. Are the requests for BI apps and functionality being satisfied quickly? And in the research that for the agility best practices report that I'm working on right now found that only 6% of respondents from organizations said that their users are very satisfied with the how rapidly new features, functions, and data access are being provided. So 6%, that's pretty low. As I mentioned before, the issue of quality. Obviously, users are very concerned about quality. They want good data quality, which is a core topic for TDWI and data warehousing systems. But they also need good software quality. They need the systems, the applications to be high quality. And even as demands get tougher to respond to, the software quality still has to be there. And their expectations are quite high. Involvement in communication. you know, a lot of organizations, IT is separate from users, analysts, data analysts are separate from users. They often might work either in IT or in a separate department. And, you know, we're seeing a lot of interest in trying to integrate the two together and at least increase communication between users and developers of BI and data warehousing systems. So, and you know, Ralph will be talking about that being a key issue behind the use of Agile development methods. But that's a user issue as well. They want to know, you know, data, if it's so important to their decision making, they need to know more about how the applications are being developed, how reports are being developed, how dashboards are being developed, because they have a lot of decisions that are riding on the data that they're going to be interacting with through those systems. So a more collaborative relationship between users and BI and data warehousing developers is becoming more and more of a crucial issue. And then I think that the final one, you know, is always our direction. Do users, both users and developers, understand, you know, where this project fits into an overall strategy, how it relates to other BI and data warehousing projects, so that you're not reinventing the wheel or creating conflicts in terms of data access methods and things like that. And so there has to be a methodology in place that can you know, be able to fit those projects into a larger scheme of what the organization is trying to do with BI and data warehousing. So some of the essential things, you know, for BI and data warehouse development methods that you know, I think our research has shown and that need to be changed. So the ability to deal with new and unpredictable requirements. So that's, you know, I think one of the key things, obviously, of Agile, being able to adapt to new circumstances, seeing new things in the market, new kinds of competition, maybe technology changes such as the internet that are radically changing how the business is functioning. Pressure, you know, dealing with the pressure of having to develop methods and processes, or develop methods and processes that can allow organizations to deal with that pressure of having to do more with less, get away from the criticism of, you know, slow and inflexible development, being able to be more responsive to users. As I mentioned, it's becoming a high priority as organizations are increasing their data-driven decision-making, as they want more decisions throughout the organization to be made based on good data. It increases the importance of, you know, developing these systems more quickly and also increasing the collaboration between developers and users so that it's done right the first time, or at least done in an iterative fashion so that systems can change in a direction that is good for what users need. And so the objective is really to deliver business value sooner to deal with these dynamic situations while increasing programmer productivity, delivering higher quality systems, and overall project success. And so these are the kind of things, you know, that I at least am gleaning from the idea of using Agile development for BI and data warehousing, and the things that we brought into the research project. That's a partnership between Ceregenics and Ralph Hughes and TDWI. Ralph and I began talking about this really at the beginning of the year and put a research survey together, which we ran, I think, in May and June. And if those who are here who participated in that research very much appreciate your participation. It's very important for us in terms of communicating to the rest of the community, you know, what kind of things are challenges in using Agile development methods, what kind of things are working and not working, what kind of things that we can bring back to the community to help in your journey through developing BI and data warehousing systems and using Agile. So we had 395 total participants, which is really very good for research survey. 299 were finished surveys. We left some in that were unfinished where they completed nearly all of the questions and the answers were substantial. But still, about 300 finished surveys is great, 75%, 75.7% there. So on that note, I'd like to bring up our co-presenter, Ralph Hughes, who's going to talk about some of the survey issues that we raised itself, and then we'll come back at the end. Ralph?
All right. Thank you, Dave. Good morning, everyone. First of all, I want to start off by thanking the directors of TDWI, not only for participating in this survey, which I think is bringing some very important, valuable information to the community of data warehouse practitioners, but in general for being brave enough to add Agile data warehousing classes to the curriculum. Back in 2009, we taught our first Agile 101 class in the Orlando World Conference. And I think it was particularly brave because we didn't have these statistics that I'm about to show you that would guarantee that it works. What it was a crazy proposition, which is, hey, let's try to build really big systems with a minimum of 2B specifications, with a minimum of project management. Let's try self-organized teams. And instead of big deliverables with big designs up front, let's try to do small slices and deliver something in 3 weeks, 4 weeks, 2 months, instead of a year, 18 months. So that was a bold direction to go in, and I think TDWI deserves a lot of credit for giving it a try. And now, 3 years later, we've been able to put a survey out to the community and get 300 responses, and we've got statistics to show that it may have been a bold idea, but it was not a crazy idea. That Agile data warehousing has been defined, there is a practice out there, and that companies are succeeding with it. And so I think this should be reassuring to any organization here that's feeling frustrated with traditional development methods, because the common predicament that we find ourselves in, and certainly one I found myself in as a practice manager. I was managing a practice for TRW at the time when we first encountered these Agile methods, and we were following a strict traditional waterfall methodology. We had customers saying, you guys are too slow, you're too expensive. And often, our customers would try a small vendor on the side who would work in a more agile fashion just by instinct, and they would deliver in half the time, a third of the time, and naturally that was a very awkward moment for us as a large systems integrator. So there was a strong pressure to try to find an alternative way. And it's cool that it's been defined and that we're starting to see success. And I think we're seeing more than success. I think we're seeing a solid approach to delivering systems faster and cheaper. So let me go. So it's good to take a real quick look at where we were before we introduced an Agile method to this practice called data warehousing business intelligence. In 2004, a magazine called DM Review, which is still exists today as Business Intelligence, right? They did a survey of their readership and said, what was the average implementation of a warehouse? How much did it cost? And they got back from their readership that it was about 17 months to put one online, and it was about $13 million on average. And no wonder our customers were telling us, you guys are too slow, you're too expensive. We're making them wait 18 months to start getting insights into their operational data. The really eye-opener was when they asked about their success rates. Internally built applications, according to this survey, had a 65% failure rate. In one way or another, the project that was promised by IT did not come in on time, on budget, or with all the promised features. And then, of course, for a while, were trying to buy data warehouses, the whole data warehouse in a box movement, or we were trying to purchase data warehouses that came with our transactional systems. And according to this survey, even the purchase packages had an even worse failure rate. So, back in 2004, it was clear something had to be done. We had to find a better way. So for those of you who have been taking other classes besides the Agile curriculum that was offered here at this conference, let me just give you Agile in a nutshell so that we all know a little bit about what we're talking about as we go forward into the statistics. The notion is that you take your business partner and you embed them in the project somehow. You get them to work eye to eye with your developers. You start working with just-in-time requirements, just enough software architecture, and you deliver in small little pieces. Basically, you take your project and you define it in single sentences of business need, and you make a list out of it, you put it in priority order, and you get yourself a group of developers, 6 to 10, and you say, just start at the top of that list and put yourself in a 2-week, 4-week time box and see what you can deliver. And we'll figure out as we watch how fast we're going, and that will tell us how much we can commit to at the top of the list each time we come back to grab more of these functional requirements that we want built out. So here we go. We start at the top of the list. We have this self-organized team figure out the best way to build software in that tight little time box, and they deliver a few shippable modules. And we're not building a prototype here. These are units of code that we could put into production, and then we come back and repeat that process, and we gather up a release pool, a release candidate, and after 2 or 3 iterations, we ask our embedded business partner, hey, is this a critical mass of features? Would this have value? And if they say yes, then it's time to take the effort to push it into production, load the data, and train the users, and get them working on a small piece of the warehouse that's being delivered, while the team continues to build out more features in the cyclical process. So that's the notion of agile data warehousing, and on first blush, it's a crazy idea. You know, all these questions come in. What about architecture? What about reusable modules? You know, what about the fact that if you make a small change to your data definition language, you're going to have to rewrite months of ETL? For those of you who want to learn more about this, we do have a book coming out this October that you can go and reference for the details on this. In there, you'll see the way that the companies, the corporations that I've worked with, as we've learned and figured out how to do this agile approach, you'll see the solutions that we've come up to for those kinds of questions. They're very good questions. The answers are subtle, but they do exist. So what I want to share with you today is the notion that we've figured out a lot of this. We are still learning, but we have enough of a track record now that anybody who looks at that and says, you know, I think that's insane, we can say, well, please consider the statistics as well, because we do have organizations that are pursuing large applications in this fashion, and they're doing okay. So here we go. We put out that question. It had about 25 questions at it, and as Dave mentioned, we had about 300 respondents. And a lot of them were, you know, demographic type questions, like how big is your organization, how long have you been doing Agile, and so on and so forth. One of them that I thought was notable was how many people in your BI organization. Now, if you would look at the distribution of just companies in general, you would see a big stack over in less than 10, 11 to 25, because there's a lot of small companies out there that have small BI, DW organizations. But in this survey, we did get a considerable amount, 15%, with over 100 in their DW departments. So we've got good representation from large companies and good representation from small. So I think that these results that you're about to see are representative for many, many organizations. It's not just the big companies, and it's not just the little guys. It seems to be almost any company you can imagine. So how many years have you been doing Agile development? Well, the question, one thing I was looking for when I looked at this answer was, if they try it, do they stick with it? Because if we saw the bars all piled up here in less than a year, or 1 to 2 projects, or 1 to 2 years, then it tells me, hey, they tried it, it didn't work, they've gone back to waterfall. But we have a fairly good population here that has been doing this for 2 to 5 years, and even a good 10% that's been doing it 5 years or more. So it seems that companies that do Agile data warehousing find it rewarding enough to stay with it. Now, we also asked about experience in terms of number of projects. And we do have a considerable amount that when they answered the survey, they were just getting started, or they had only finished a pilot phase. Good enough. Yes, it's a new approach, so we're going to have a lot of people who have just started. But we did have considerable numbers of respondents that had 3 to 5 projects under their belts. And we're even getting, 15% of our respondents that have 5 or more. So not only have we have organizations in this survey that have tried it, they're starting to scale it out to the rest of it. It's not just a departmental solution now, it's a program level solution, maybe even an enterprise level solution. So here's the big one. Ask this population, you've tried Agile, did you succeed? And we broke it into brackets. We said, hey, give us the subjective feel for how often your Agile projects succeed. Is it 0 to 20% of the time? Is it 20 to 40% of the time? 40 to 60, 60 to 80, or 80 to 100? And I was very pleased to see the big tall bars on the right, that you've got companies that are using Agile methods to build very large database applications, and they're having a success rate in the range of 60, 80%, or 80 to 100%. But one thing that's very notable is to try to spot the success rate of waterfall projects on this chart. If you think back to that DM review survey from 2004, traditional waterfall was in that range. 35% of their projects were succeeding. So I'm going to show you some more breakouts of these success statistics. I'm going to use these same ranges. The one we want to look for is that second one from the left, because that's where waterfall is. If we can get success bars piling up on the right side of that, not only are people trying Agile, but they're seeing improvements over their traditional methods. And that's, I think, is a very important finding. So if you take that waterfall benchmark, we're seeing 82% of companies that are using Agile methods for data warehousing, business intelligence, finding more success with this iterative approach, with this crazy idea of using self-organized teams, embedded customers in the project, and just-in-time requirements, just enough software architecture. Now, success by method. There's about 12 methods out there, depending on how you count them. The most popular one among the population that we surveyed was Scrum. We had Lean and Kanban and Scrumban, which is a combination of those first two, bringing up the second, a distant second, and then there's FDD, and then the unified process out there too. There were a couple others, but these were the largest groupings. And this is reassuring for me, and I hope for the TDWI directors, because the Agile 101 class that we teach here is based on Scrum. It uses Scrum as a starting point, and it brings in some elements of these Lean and UP process as well. But the bulk of it is Scrum. Now, that was done just instinctively. When my company was looking around for a formalization of this close collaboration iterative model, we picked Scrum because Scrum was easy to learn, easy to remember, easy for a facilitator to keep on track. That was what made it very attractive to us. It's very reassuring to see that seems to be the consensus out there among the organizations that are also doing Agile. So for those of you who want to go Agile, and one of the first questions will be, what method size should I use? I think the fact that you have a large population doing Scrum is an important input for your decision itself. And then I broke this out with the red bar being the companies that said success less than waterfall, and green was success at more than waterfall. And it's nice to see that 87% of the Scrum users saw their success rates improve. Now here's another look at the success rates. We're starting to do some cross-tab analysis here. What is the impact of experience on your success rates? I think this brings to the surface a very important insight. If you see the folks that have only done a pilot project, the red bar is success less than they're experiencing with waterfall, and orange is about equivalent. So there you've got about 75% at doing as good as quote, good as waterfall or worse. Those people they're struggling. They're struggling with this Agile method. But what I think is notable is that when you move to experience of 1 or 2 projects beyond your pilot, those bars that represent struggling go down markedly. And then as you move into the 3 projects and beyond, they almost disappear. So the takeaway that I got from this particular crosstab was that experience helps. If you are going to be embarking on an Agile program, and you're going to be building an important application, you may want to pick up an advantage and avoid this tall set of bars indicating struggling on your first trip around the track. Maybe you would need to find someone who's got some experience. I think that would be advisable. Go find someone that's done it and have them come in and share with you the details. Because one thing we always say about Scrum and a lot of the other Agile methods, they're simple, but they're not easy. They are actually less than a method. They're more like collaboration models. And the teams themselves actually have to figure out the details of the method. And I think we see here that they do figure them out, but it does take a project or two to master them. So a little bit of experience might help you on your success rates. Now, Agile, it's been around for 15 years plus, but it's been mostly done on the transaction capture side, OLTP instead of OLAP. And over there, it's gotten a bad rap for a couple of idiosyncrasies, a couple of things they don't do so well. So in our survey, we wanted to see if the Agile data warehousing community was doing better in these regards or having the same kinds of challenges. So we asked folks, hey, what do you think about the quality of the deliverables you're getting? Traditional Agile over there in the transaction capture world, they get knocked for having undisciplined development, insufficient analysis, insufficient planning, insufficient architecture. They are said to be difficult to govern, and the number one complaint is they don't document. Self-organized teams, tight time box, they're going to be focusing on pushing out code very quickly. Maybe they cut a few corners. Well, we asked each one of those questions, and we said, do you disagree with this negative statement, or do you agree with it? If they disagreed, that was a good thing, so I put the disagreements on the left here, and I colored them green, because that's a positive result. If they agreed with these negative statements, I put them on the right and in red. And those shows areas that we need to think about and maybe focus on. So low quality, the statement that Agile teams deliver low quality, thank goodness, most of the respondents, 84% disagreed with that. So Agile teams are contributing to their success, and they're turning in quality results. Now, as you go down this list, you're starting to see the challenges appear. Undisciplined development, 69% disagree with that, either somewhat or strongly. Okay, so a third have a bit of undisciplined development. Insufficient analysis, only 2/3 disagreed with that. So again, a third is proceeding before they think it through. Enough, sufficiently, insufficient planning of the project itself, all the dependencies and the steps. You're seeing 6 out of 10 disagreeing, so you got 4 out of 10 saying, yep, that's a challenge. Insufficient architecture, you're seeing 45% saying, yes, we wish we did a better job on that. And you got more than half saying these projects are difficult to govern. And then when it gets down to insufficient documentation, almost 6 out of 10 saying, yes, we wish our teams would write down what they built a little more often than they do. So we see some good success rates, but it's not entirely a rosy picture. There's some places where we still have some work to do. And I think that one thing we need to focus in, and this provides some direction for us working with TDWI, places where we can expand the curriculum, focus in a little bit more strongly, which, hey, these projects need to get a little more discipline in their inception. We need to have a little bit of more analysis and a little more planning and a little more architecture up front. We have some issues to deal with government and insufficient documentation. So there's room for improvement. I didn't want to come up here and paint the Chamber of Commerce version of Agile data warehousing. I wanted to show you what we've achieved, warts and all. Well, there were a couple of warts. But let's go back to the positive side. What if we ask those companies, hey, did this improve your success rate? And they say yes. Well, we want a few more details on that. You know, success is made up of many things. Now, this portion of the survey parallels the survey that they have run on the OLTP side. So we got to see whether we were comparable or different than our transaction capture brethren. So on productivity, 4 out of 5 are saying Agile helped the productivity of our teams. Our programmers' ability to quickly produce shippable modules. On customer satisfaction, again, 4 out of 5 are saying our customer satisfaction went up. Now, productivity, quality, 60% said the quality went up. And there you had, what is it? I can't quite read that on the monitor. About 3 out of 10 saying it's about the same. So 1 out of 10 said quality went down. And I was pondering, why didn't we get such a big bump in quality? Seems to make sense to me. Data warehouses, that's all about data quality. Maybe we focused on data quality pretty, better than our OLTP friends from the start. So, okay, I can understand why we didn't get quite a big a bump with quality. But then we get to cost. So did costs get better or get worse? Did your costs go down or did they go up? And this is a point where maybe we should pause and reflect a little bit. Only 30% said costs got better. 30% said they're about the same. But we had 40% that said costs went up. Cost control got worse when we went to Agile. Is that good or is it bad? Well, I wish that was 100% costs went down, of course. But I'm thinking about this. We have switched to a method where we have given the team greater productivity, we're satisfying the customer, we're improving quality. If cost is going to go up a little bit now and then, I guess maybe that's an okay price to pay. Maybe what we're doing is we're investing more resources in better results. And just anecdotally, my experience with the teams that I've coached and participated with as an architect, we keep a solutions architect involved with the team much longer than in Waterfall. In Waterfall, we used to have them build a spec and throw it over the wall, and then they would go off and work with another project. And the same thing with the data modeler. But in an Agile context, we are working in a project room, shoulder to shoulder, eye to eye, and we're working with a just-in-time requirements, just enough software architecture. We need those architects to stick around. And so we are absorbing more of their time, and of course, they're charging our projects. So that's right. We are investing more in the quality of our results, so the costs are going to go up a little bit. Another thing is we have system testers join our teams much sooner in the process. And therefore, that's going to cost us a bit of money. So I understand intuitively why we didn't get as big an improvement with cost as we did with quality and productivity. I still would like to do better there. So let's see. Let me go right back here. So we started doing crosstabs. What determined whether costs went up? Did it have something to do with experience? Did it have something to do with industry you were in? Did it have something to do with tools used or your method? And all those, we couldn't find a strong signal for that. We found a strong signal for one thing. One thing seemed to correlate with costs going up. Anybody want to give it a guess? Basic demographic fact. It was the size of your company. Big companies seem to struggle with containing costs. If you had less than 100 people in your company, costs only went up 30% at a time, but if you had more than 100,000 people in your company, you had costs go up 57% of the time. That's almost a 2-to-1 increase. So there's something that big companies do that makes it harder to keep costs under control. Anecdotally, they let big companies that I've worked with, they'll let the Agile teams try it out the first time or two, but pretty soon they start saying, well, this is starting to work, now let's institutionalize it. And then they bring in enterprise data architecture and the program management office, and they start auditing the teams and also requiring enterprise level architecture specifications from them, and they start going back to waterfall. So I think from my experience, I can see why the big companies tend to lose control and costs more frequently than little companies. But we do have some leadership out there. We've got 20% of the respondents that found a way to get more quality and improve costs. And on the right side, 26% found a way to improve programmer productivity and improve costs. So in our next survey, I hope that we can retool the questions a bit to drill in a little bit more in this area and find out what it is that those companies are doing, the ones that have found the magic solution. Let's try to bring that to the surface for the rest of us to follow. And in method, they all seem to struggle, except for over there on the right, the unified process. That was a very few respondents were following that, but they didn't have any problem with cost. We need to look at how they define their projects as well and may bring some of those practices to the rest of the methods. I think there isn't a ceiling on it yet. We haven't hit the ceiling on how fast we can accelerate these teams, because when we asked what tools you're using, there's these tools down here that actually reduce the number of objects you have to build, and very few companies were using them. Change data capture was under 30%. Rules engines, model-driven development, data virtualization, those are under 20%. Those are all tools that will reduce the amount of objects we have to build. They could accelerate us even faster. I would hope that we continue this survey and we track that adoption of those tools, and we can start seeing the impact that they'll make. So, survey questions for 2013. What is the average cost of a data warehouse now? Because we did it in 2004, what is it today? What's been the impact of Agile? What are the cost leaders doing right so we can identify the best practices and bring them forward? And what would those folks who are getting better productivity and quality and customer satisfaction, what are they doing when they start new teams? Because we want to add those pieces of instruction to our standard instruction here at the Data Warehousing Institute. And then again, what will be the impact of advanced tools? So all told, I think the message of these statistics are that Agile data warehousing has gotten defined. We still have some rough edges, but we're working through it. But we have success rates that show that we've figured it out and we're starting to thrive with this new and different approach to building large systems. Anybody out there sitting on the fence thinking about, hey, I need a new solution for building these large systems, Agile definitely has the track record now to make it worth considering seriously. So thank you very much.